Hi, everybody. Welcome to Discover College Soccer. I am lucky enough today to be joined by Coach Brian from Utica University in New York. Welcome, Coach.
Hi, Matt. Thanks for having me. Excited
Thank
to give you a little info on the school and answer any questions you may have for those recruits.
Awesome. Well, thanks for being here. Well, let's dive into the recruiting side of things. You guys are Division III program in upstate New York. When do you usually start hearing from players? When do you usually start, really kind of getting hot and heavy in terms of talking to players and really focusing what you're in high school or the players generally speaking?
It seems that every year that tends to be early and earlier. I think at least with the initial outreach, we tend to hear from players, really as early as their sophomore year or entering their sophomore year. At that point, it's just an initial, overview of the university and kind of what we might have to offer on a very basic level. For us, really looking to pursue and scout players and try to develop, lists for prospective students for whatever year they're entering. I would say we focus on that more as they enter their junior year. Sophomore year is a little tough, especially some of the communication things. And, most of those players, they don't have 100% of an idea of what, they want to study or whatnot. But yeah, we really try to get our initial overview going as they enter their junior year and really develop those conversations and get in depth throughout that season. I think the one thing I would say that's a little different is locally. Locally you have an idea of who the players are probably a little earlier on. So that's a little more in depth when it comes to 30 or 40 miles from campus.
Yeah. Well, how many inbound contacts would you say you get in a typical week? Obviously it changes over, but just a round number.
As far as outreach, it's a lot. I mean, we probably get 25, 30 kids a week, reaching out that are potentially interested in the school or maybe, and that could be anywhere from they have, a real familiarity with it, or maybe a guidance counselor recommended or a friend, went to the school, something like that. But yeah, I would say we filter through 25, 30 a week.
What do you like to see in those communications from a recruit?
I think the big things are just that you'd like to see that they've done a little bit of a search on the school. Your coach can tell when it's a generic email that's gone out to 100 coaches versus a select number of colleges or the specific university. I mean, it makes sense sometimes when you see it with 7 or 8 other schools that are known for maybe the same type of academic program, and that student's very interested in that. But I like to see the specifics if they've done a little bit of research. And then, I want academic information and playing information. I don't need a 30-minute highlight, but, certainly a coaching reference, schedule of events when you're going to play, and your academic profile, because that's really going to determine a lot.
Makes sense. Now you mentioned knowing the radius kind of around your school of players, but where do you spend a majority of your time on the recruiting trail? Are there specific tournaments you make sure you see every year? What do you look at high school games? What is kind of your focus each year?
Yeah, I think locally, we do tend to hit up the some of the playoff games, like the state playoff games or late rounds of the sectional or county playoff games in the fall, because that's pretty just easy from a logistical standpoint. But mainly it's on the club circuit with tournaments, whether it be showcases or playoff events. There's more and more leagues and competitions, it seems like, every year. But we try to go to some of those major national showcases, and we do a little bit of traveling too. I mean, the roster is around half the state of New York, and then it's pretty spread out after that. It gets pretty diverse. I mean, we have guys from Seattle, Florida, Chicago, the West Coast. So there's definitely us getting out there and going to major events, whether that be ECNL playoffs or MLS Next stuff or Surf Cup. We're kind of everywhere, really.
What about camps? How do they fit into your overall recruiting schedule? Are you running your own? Do you and your staff work at other schools' camps? How does that work?
Yeah, so our staff does attend a couple ID camps as far as part of a larger camp or ID setup. I've worked a couple in New York at Division I institutions. My assistant will as well. We also host them though. We have an ID camp tomorrow on campus. So, that's a great one for, I think, you've gone past the initial overview and, you're within the region and you can really get a feel for kind of a day in the life of the student. Typically they're able to tour campus, maybe, have a meal on there, meet with the coaches afterwards or the next morning. So I think that's a great tool once you've kind of done an initial look at Utica and think that it could be a good fit for you.
So when you're, recruiting players and seeing them, whether that's at a camp or at a showcase or something, what's kind of your hierarchy of what you want to see in a player, whether that's on the field or off the field? What's your checklist of, okay, I want to make sure this player's got A, B, C?
Yeah, I think, it's funny, there's two different answers to that. I think the first part, initially, you hope to see a certain level of athleticism and competitiveness. That's kind of like you need to have that to be successful at the college level. But like the differentiators for the guys that end up being, high level players, all conference type selections, all region potential, all American, those guys, there's a soccer IQ and the ability to process the game at a quicker level that is really hard to coach or ingrain in a player once they're already 18 or 19 years old. I mean, we could certainly, instill ideas with them, but like guys that can just process the speed of play really well, those ones seem to have the most potential. From a non-soccer standpoint, the intangible qualities, obviously work rate's a big thing, but coachability and how they interact with their teammates. I mean, it's just a huge piece of it. You can weather a loss or two at a tough point in the season if your team is bought in and together and there's a sense of family there. But if it's guys who really don't handle adversity well and have a penchant for getting after their teammates in the wrong way, that's someone we try to steer away from. It's not going to bode well for long-term success.
Yeah. Gotcha. Well, with you guys being Division III and no athletic scholarships, what does the overall kind of financial aid situation look like for anybody that is looking at your school?
Yeah, no, it's a huge piece of it. The school offers both athletic. Yeah, I wish we do offer academic grant money and need-based aid as well. So there's going to be a combination of merit money based on your performance in school, and then need-based aid, related to your FAFSA and your family's financials. But the school offers a good deal of both. I know we're one of the most affordable privates in the entire Northeast.
That's great. Well, let's talk more about the school in general. For anybody who's not familiar with upstate New York, I can click around the website, learn about the school, but give me kind of the inside scoop. What are some of the things that are awesome about Utica that I might not know just by clicking around the website?
I think first and foremost, just the feel of the campus as far as the people, the vibe of it. The city and the school are very interconnected, and it really has a tight-knit feel. It's pretty tough to go around campus after being on it for even a week or two to not see faces that are, even if you're not close to them, just interacting. Everybody's very friendly, and that kind of spreads into the community. The university really is one of the major players in the city, and they have a very big presence there. To give you an idea, it's a school of about 3,000 undergrads. Some of our sports average well over that for attendance for games. Like men's hockey, for example, has led the nation in attendance every year, I think, for I want to say 15 plus years. They average almost 4,000 people a game. Every student's not going to every game. That's a lot of the local community and the people there in the surrounding areas that support the college. And you get that from faculty, professors, staff, from the top on down. You can see our administration at almost all the events, and they really are there for the students.
No, that's awesome. Well, with being a student athlete, there's a lot of things put on you in terms of commitments and things you have to make sure you take care of. So how do student athletes at your school specifically handle the balance between their studies and their sports?
Yeah, it's it can be a bit overwhelming at first. I think couple things there. One, the school has some great support services, built in to help with that transition from secondary school to college life, especially as an athlete. So we have a couple full-time staff members who their sole jobs are to aid in that transition. They work with our incoming freshmen, and they meet with them kind of every other week to do an overview of their classes. They help set up tutoring services. They might just be a connect with me to say, hey, student A is having a little bit of trouble in his economics classes. I don't know if he's, hiding that from you or not, and we can, work through that. But it's just kind of a second voice to kind of go through that and be a support for the student. So that's one thing. I think the other thing too is there is, some real commitment to freeing up some afternoons as far as class time. So like there are no classes at the college after 1 o'clock on Wednesdays. So that's kind of our midweek travel. I think it was originally designed as an administrative day, but we realized pretty quickly we can maximize that for students not missing class time who are part of our athletic pool. In the athletic department is a huge player on campus. I think like 25% of our undergrads, play a varsity sport here. So, that they really are committed to working with them and understanding the differences and balancing them.
Well, that's great. You mentioned the schedule. So what would a typical week look like for a student athlete, like during the season, in terms of getting up, practice times, all that kind of thing?
Yeah, I think one of the things is probably is surprising to a lot of students when they get to college or to their university is that you're not actually in class as much as you might think you're going to be. Obviously in high school or most prep schools, you're going to be there for throughout the day. They're only in class maybe 3 hours a day. So I would say embrace understanding who you are. If you're a morning person, customize your schedule for that. If you're a later in the day guy, do that as well. But they're only going to be in school about 3 hours a day, and then it's taking advantage of your spare time to properly do your reading, do your homework, do your test prep until we get into practice. We typically train about 4:30 every weekday. If there's a midweek, a non-conference game, so you're going to be in class for roughly 3 hours, anytime from 8:30 till about 3:30. And then, we try to tell those guys, stay on the academic side of campus during then, don't sneak off for a round of FIFA. And you get ahead because, if you're facing an injury or you're coming off of one, you're probably going to be in the training room 45 to an hour before practice. You might have to ice or get stretched afterwards. So you figure prep at 3:30, training at 4:30, done around 6:15 in the training room then. I mean, it's 7 o'clock and you haven't grabbed dinner yet. So it's maximizing those daytime hours is probably the most crucial skill. But that would be the schedule, Monday, Tuesday. If we had a midweek game, they're typically in the locker room about an hour and a half before kickoff. If we're traveling, we're trying to arrive at our away match about 2 hours prior. And I would say about half the weeks in the year we have that midweek contest. Otherwise, that schedule would kind of repeat through Friday, and then obviously a home or an away game on Saturday.
So speaking of travel, what does your kind of radius look like for conference, non-conference games? How much do you guys have to travel?
Yeah, it's not the travel load isn't too bad here. One of the things that helps is the conference is pretty much spread out throughout all of New York State, but we are very, very centrally located. I mean, if you look at a map, it's basically a pin dead in the middle of it. So we kind of luck out in that there's not really any super long conference trips. I would say our farthest one is about 3.5 hours, which isn't too bad. Non-conference, every other year we'll open up with a season opening tournament that might be a little farther away. I know we try to do that every other year. I think the last one we were scheduled for was when COVID hit in 2020. We were supposed to go down to Virginia. But so that's something we'll look to get back on the slate in 2023. But for the most part, now they're under 3 hours. We have a couple really good local rivalries too that are literally across town.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, let's talk more about the team then. How many players do you like to typically carry on the squad?
I think a perfect number is 27 to 28. with 3 or 4 keepers. I think, that gives you a little bit of flexibility if there's some injuries to where you're still able to have some 11v11 looks in training. You want to see your shape or work on some schemes, whether that's suppress or a defensive setup in like a low block or something like that. But at the same time, that number is low enough to where, everybody's competing for a spot. You feel valued in it, and you know that your efforts in training are going to be rewarded if you're consistently performing. I don't like to go much beyond that, just because I feel that it's really hard over the course of a long season with how grueling it can be physically for a guy 36 or 37 or 38 to still feel like they're really going to contribute. And our staff is that's how we felt for a while. I think last year we were a touch smaller. We were at like 26. This incoming year, I think we'll be 1 or 2 bigger. But, it's really, personally, I think it gets a little unwieldy over like 30 guys.
Yeah, for sure. Well, you mentioned staff. So how big is your soccer staff? What roles does everybody play?
So it's usually 3 people. So it's myself, my assistant, Nick Kalo, who is he's a graduate assistant here at the college. It's a tremendous program for kind of, an opening or entry level position for someone getting into the collegiate game. And then we've been lucky enough to have a number of alumni who have been volunteers over the year. It's typically someone different every other year, but they live locally in the area, and they always want to hop on typically right after graduating. Usually 3.
Okay. How would you describe your style of coaching, team style of play, kind of that culture of the team?
Yeah, I think for a style of coaching, when things are going well, I'm a bit of a joke guy, kind of just like, we bust them on each other a little bit in training the guys, and there's the lighthearted feel. As long as we're taking care of our responsibilities, if that's going well, that's kind of the vibe. It's a lot of laughing and camaraderie. In the matches, certainly pretty intense. I try, as the years gone on, I think my first couple of years, I was certainly the coach just yelling with every sequence of play, trying to dictate everything. That's changed a lot. Now it's just, if there's something, quite obvious, maybe that we're not picking up on, you'll hear me loud and clear. But that's been reined in a lot over the years. As far as style of play, pretty high energy. We like to press pretty high, turn guys over. I like to have guys who play with a bit of aggression, and I'd rather have to pull them back a little bit than, have a team that's very possession focused and maybe sitting back in a lower level of intensity. We try to transition quickly. Like I said, we really are focused on occupying higher areas of the pitch and creating a lot of our goals through that.
Okay. We're talking here in April. What does your off-season program typically look like?
Yeah, so right now we're in the middle of our non-traditional season. Well, actually towards the back part of it. So we are scheduled to have our spring exhibition match tomorrow night against a local JUCO program. They're one of the top 5 or 6 teams in the country at that level. So really looking forward to that. But I think that really starts at the beginning of the spring semester. So before we even get into those team practices, our guys are with our strength and conditioning coaches 3 to 4 days a week. We have some tremendous facilities with regards to that, and they're in there like Monday, Wednesday, Friday, or Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, depending on the schedule. And they get some optional runs in as well. That kind of goes from basically the day they're back on campus for spring semester up until spring break, and then we'll hop into our non-traditional, which is, I think it's 16 sessions are permitted. And we typically will end it with that spring match.
Okay. Well, we've covered a lot of ground. I want to be respectful of your time, but want to make sure you cover anything you want to cover. So my last question is, what did we miss? Anything more you want to talk about with regards to your school, your program, or anything you want to reiterate? We'll give you the floor for a final time here.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is just that, the college is in a really great place. There's been so much growth and energy at Utica since I've gotten here. And, you know, whether it's, you know, new academic facilities or support for students or athletic ones. I mean, in the last 5 years, we put in a massive indoor, you know, winter training area, you know, right on campus, which helps a lot in the Northeast. Sometimes you get some crazy weather days. You know, there's a second turf stadium that went in last year. So I think one of the biggest things is you think maybe Division III athletics, the amount of support and energy and the resources being put into it from our institution really enables guys to get to a higher level of player than I think they really perceived coming in. You know, we're really able to take them wherever they want. And you know, the bigger focus for us though is just trying to get them to where they want to be career-wise afterwards, you know, not related to soccer. It's funny when our guys come in, I think, you know, meeting with coach, they probably think I'm going to harp on their positioning or, you know, how they're not taking advantage of the half space if they're like an inverted winger or something. And most of the time it's, you know, how's mom and dad? How are the family? You know what I mean? You know, what are your classes looking like? Are you think you're going to be able to secure that internship you wanted? And I mean, 80% of the time we're talking about life, you know what I mean? And then we get to just pursue the passion part once we step onto the field. And that's kind of the mission statement with, at least with our program and with the school. And that's what we try to tell them. And that's what we're here for.
That's good stuff. Well, Coach, I really appreciate the time. Wish you the best of luck in the upcoming fall season, and we'll keep an eye and see how you guys are doing.
All right, Matt. Thank you for having me. I really enjoyed it. So if you need anything, holler.
Awesome. Thanks, Coach.